Us on the line is Charles Sauer, the libertarian economist and president of the Market Institute. He's also the author of the new book, Profit Motive, What Drives the Things We Do. MarketInstitute.org is the website. You can tweet him at Charles Sauer, S-A-U-E-R. And Charles, I see that a majority of Democrats in the Democratic caucus have called for the White House to support this TRIPS waiver. This is essentially... what it says is that right now, Pfizer, for example, just to pick one company, for example, right now, Pfizer controls the patent on their product that they developed, and therefore they control who can make it and what it gets sold for, and they can make any kind of profit they want. They just showed a fairly massive profit, $3.5 billion profit just on this drug. And one of the largest corporate profits, or Pfizer profits in their history in this last quarter as a result of this. And what this waiver does through the World Trade Organization's trade agreements is it requires Pfizer to allow other companies in other countries to manufacture this product and pay Pfizer a reasonable profit, which under World Trade Organization rules is around 7%. Of the revenue, the total revenue for which the product is sold by the generic companies in other countries. So Pfizer isn't losing explicitly. They're not getting anything stolen from them, arguably, but they are losing considerable profit that they could make if they were to hang on to manufacturing and say, no, we're going to dribble this out over 3 years, let a few 100 million people die, but hey, we'll make billions more in profits. So, A, any disagreement with how I've described what's going on, and B, whether you disagree or not, your take on it all. Charles Sauer.
I mean, except for your attacks on the companies interspersed, I think that the general facts are correct here. But the main idea here, and the problem is not this pandemic. The problem is the next pandemic, because innovation is what has built the American economy, and it is what built this vaccine and meant that these companies were able to have a vaccine within a day of getting the actual genetic information for what we were facing. And so we were able to actually produce it in a year. I mean, this was amazing stuff. This was the type of progress that nobody could have imagined. And that's because we have a very strong research and development system in the U.S., and we were able to produce it. So if you take away
hang on just a second, Charles. Hang on. Charles, the Pfizer vaccine was not developed in the United States. It was developed by a Turkish immigrant company in Germany based on mRNA technology that's been around for 20 years and that's been applied to SARS viruses like the coronavirus for over 5 years. So, and not one penny of Donald Trump's so-called Operation Warp Speed went to the development of this vaccine. What am I missing here?
Warp Speed was definitely oversold. Well, the benefit of Warp Speed was getting paperwork out of the way so that they could go through the approval process faster. The money that was spent was, Trump took more credit than he was due for Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah, I think we can agree on that.
We haven't seen many presidents come in and remove the red tape in the way that he did in this system. So he does deserve some credit in this. But look, when we're talking about intellectual property, we're talking about one of the few rights that is actually in the United States competition. We have a right to free speech, and you have a right to own your intellectual property. So what the Biden administration is doing is taking that away. Look, the European Union rejected this waiver. I believe Germany did. Japan did. Major countries with research and development arms rejected this waiver because it is ridiculous, and it doesn't just hurt the response to COVID, because there's plenty of ways to get vaccines to these countries without running over intellectual property rights. But it hurts,
for example,
investment
please
in the
name
next
one.
Round.
Why aren't we doing that then? I mean, you've got massive meltdowns happening right now in India, which has some of the most advanced and extensive vaccine manufacturing plants in the world. We buy vaccines from India, but they can't make any of these COVID vaccines because every single one of them is covered by a patent that isn't an Indian patent.
these companies have not had any problems licensing out their patents. They haven't had a problem lowering prices and producing things at reasonable amounts. What you talked about in your first response to me was called FRAND, fair and reasonable rates. Well, there's actually ways to set this up. And by going against the market and by just avoiding that, it looks like you're being good to the rest of the country. But what you are doing is undermining the intellectual property system, the research and development system, and more importantly, the investment into that. Look, I've got 3 kids. I like talking about them. I teach them to be inventors. But the idea about inventing is you get that intellectual property. It's one of the rights that the founders put in the Constitution for a reason. It made us different than other countries. And the fact is if we run over those rights now, we hurt tomorrow. And that's the problem that I have with this. That's the problem that the other countries, the European Union, we're not alone in doing this. This is just the Democrats wanting to go after a large corporation that they randomly think is making too much money. And I want them to make money off this. I want them to make money off helping us get out of COVID.
They've already made a fortune. But just to be clear here, Charles, are you saying that if because you know what the World Trade Organization is saying, what the United Nations is saying, what numerous countries are saying, and frankly what the Democrats are saying, and I'm not hearing any pushback from this on the facts, is that if these waivers, which again are not going to hurt Pfizer. Pfizer, instead of making 1,000% profit or a 10,000% profit, is only going to make a 7% profit because of these waivers. But if these waivers don't happen, if these waivers do happen, then countries all over the world can ramp up and start manufacturing vaccine immediately. And this isn't just Pfizer, by the way. This applies to other companies as well. But if these waivers don't happen, we're going to have hundreds of millions of people dead, billions of people infected, and a massive explosion in vaccine mutations that could kill us all. I mean, it just seems like a reasonable deal. Charles, you got the last 20 seconds.
Well, if you look at the innovation, the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, ITIF, they're a left-leaning foundation in general. They have 10 ways that we could actually increase vaccine production without this. And they talk about the fact that with this, it's actually going to slow things down. So this isn't just me talking. This isn't just the Republicans talking. There's large countries against this. There's intellectuals on the left that are opposed to this. This is a major issue. And because, look, if you waive the intellectual property rights, these countries that don't have the labor force right now will take time to actually figure out how to implement the
Charles Hartmann Program.
We have that over here
Charles
already.
Sauer. Charles, Sauer, is Twitter handle and marketinstitute.org on the internet. Thank you, Charles.